Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. Today I'll be discussing the history of hero classes in Ragnarok Mobile Eternal Love. I'll be discussing their impact, the good they brought, and also the bad. Also, with the switch away from non-hero classes, what solution would I suggest? Stay tuned for all the details. So let's head all the way back to October 2022 when Thanatos was first released. Thanatos was the first hero class ever released. He uses a sword, so it did make sense to be under Knight. Now, hero classes have a simpler playstyle as all skills can be invested in, unlike non-hero classes. For example, Thanatos has 12 skills, and some of these are passives too, so it really simplifies what is on your manual and auto bar. So let's compare this with Dorum, which is a non-hero class, where there are skills you can invest in, so you have to choose wisely. It also allows you to have different types of builds like physical DPS, magic DPS, or support. And your manual bar can be filled with more than one slot of very useful skills. So with hero classes, you kinda lost that ability to have a very customized build. Besides that, there's also the core hero passive, which can only be leveled up with second line ruins for that class. The higher your core hero passive level, the stronger your character will be. The second line for these ruins has a 6% probability to be generated, so you can take a ton of ruins and luck until you get all 6 ruins to have a second line. Your hero class will get stronger and get exclusive new skills as you get higher core hero passive level. So why do this? Well, it can force people to buy ruin boxes that cost BCC. I have spent a ton of BCC buying ruin boxes. Although you can be lucky and stockpile ruins, for example, I have a free-to-play account where I did get level 7 core hero passive on 2 classes, but it does limit how many hero classes you can play, as you just don't get enough ruins as a free-to-play player. So unfortunately you do have to choose very wisely. This was a great way for the devs to earn money, and this obviously worked since Thanatos would not be the last hero class ever released. Next, in November 2022, both Saitama and Genos were released. This was the first collaboration with hero classes, and it did not disappoint. For a collaboration to succeed, it needs to make a lot of money. First is Saitama, the hero class for Monk. It makes sense since Monk was known to one-shot stuff, and Saitama one-shot stuff in the anime and manga. Saitama costs 300 BCC, which is standard for past collabs as well, even though they weren't hero classes. But Saitama went beyond that. The reason why Saitama is amazing is it can deal crazy high damage, but also have follow-up. In some instances, there are damage caps on bosses, such as Isles and Museum at Warrior or Legend difficulty, so you cannot one-shot bosses. That means Lightbringer, Wataru, and Shura couldn't really hit that hard because they had bad follow-up. But for PvE, Saitama became the best boss hunter and performed well in instances. I remember clearing legend instances that I couldn't do before because now I had Saitama. Now at the same time, Genos was the first hero class you had to pay real money to unlock. BCC alone wasn't enough, which some people did not like. For example, you had to do a $50 top up, which kinda sucks. Now luckily this model wasn't ever used again. I would rather have all collabs go through BCC only. Now Genos was the hero class for Gunslinger, which didn't make that much sense really, since Gunslinger and Genos don't really seem to match. Genos is magic, and Gunslinger has nothing to do with magic. So this kinda began the first hero class that didn't really have any connection to the original class. Anyway, Genos had good survivability and continuous damage, and at the time, he was the best magic DPS in the game. So as a magic user, he really became a must-buy. Now this class also introduced a modifier that I would absolutely love, damage to monsters. This allowed for powerful attacks in PvE that wouldn't affect the balance in PvP as much. For example, Incendiary Gun deals additional 50% damage to monsters. Now damage to monsters is used quite a lot these days, and this is an excellent design that I hope the devs will continue to use for buffing other classes. Next is Nidhogg, released December 2022. She is the hero class for Saint, which makes sense to add another buffer and res class. The biggest disadvantage for her was she was primarily good for one person. She wasn't a Saint replacement, but an alternative in a party if there was already another Saint. It's only much later in December 2024 that they would buff her to help her wholly convert. I personally found her at the time of release to not be a must-buy in my opinion. She's just nice to have as support. Next is Hela, released February 2023. She is the hero class for alchemists. What they have in common is they can summon things, and yes, her dogs are pretty cute. She's good for PvP, but pretty bad for PvE. Poison is a bad element to rely on since it doesn't have much elemental advantage in the game. It is why Assassin is in a bad spot since it does rely on poison. So again, not a must-have hero class. Next is Hollgrehenn, released May 2023. The hero class is for blacksmith, which does make sense since they both craft stuff and use hammers. Now, some people were disappointed that such an iconic character wasn't busted on release. He would get buffs later on and is in a much better spot today. Now, he wasn't that impactful until later when White Star Airship got released in November 2023, then he became a must-have on the weeks where there was a refined damage reduction affix, since he was the only one that could reduce it with Destructive Hammer. So this was kind of a sneaky way for the devs to force us to play Hollgrehenn and make him popular because he was the only one that could do this debuff, and later on there would be other instances in the future where this was absolutely required as well. So 3 hero classes in a row that I personally say weren't must-buys, so I suspect at this point the devs wanted a class that was really gonna sell, one with really broad appeal. Next, Rathgricy was released in July 2023. The hero class for Crusader, it didn't make that much sense because she was a DPS, but I guess she had lots of survivability. She seemed too good to be true when she got released. She set the bar for future hero classes to be very high, which I think was a good thing because that helped the game be easier for people by getting more and more busted classes that could actually solo a lot of instances themselves. So how busted? Let's look at this one skill, Valkyrie. You can be an angel to bypass demi-human reduction, 30% skill damage bonus and reduction, get endure, and get life gain from damage. You can also refresh this quickly with a 7 out of 7 core hero passive. To this day, I think this skill is one of the most busted skills in the game. It does way too much. Next is Blade of Order, which scales up both attack and magic attack, and if you're lacking Ignore defense, help it reducing enemy defense by 10% and stacking up to 5 times. But wait, that's not all. How about the best survivability in the game with Divine Wing Armor? You basically get a regenerating anti-death. If something hits you that deals more than 20% of your max HP, you lose a feather instead of dying instantly. This is basically the HP relic that happens up to 4 times since you can have 4 feathers. So now the bar for DPS was set so high it's in heaven, and she was only lightly nerfed later for PvP. She dominated in PvE for quite a while and was a great class for both free to play to pay to win. Next is Jormungandr, which was released September 2023. He is the hero class for Sorcerer, which makes sense since he does auto attacks as well. Now magic was quite dominant in PvP, so let's create a class that can deal a ton of damage, control space, and also is magic immune when in snake form thanks to its weapon. Now if you think that sounds unfair, you're absolutely right. This class is absolutely dominant in PvP, and also led to the downfall of many magic classes. Even to this day, this class feels so unfair and is one of the top 6 PvP classes in the game. Now, for PvE, Jormungandr isn't great, so that's probably his only downside. For Jormungandr, I feel he was such a meta-shifting class for PvP that it almost became a must-buy, which was a great way for the devs to earn money. Next is Heinrich, which was released November 2023. He is the hero class for ninja because ninjas can use swords. The most unique thing about him was dual wielding. He's also a great MVP hunter and has a great follow-up. so he was a non-event alternative to Saitama. So again, bad news for Lightbringer, Wataru, and Dragon Fist. For both PvP and PvE, he can also bypass enemy reflection, block, dodge effects, and immunity to death, which is annoying for the enemy. He also has the great debuff Bright Mirror, making it useful for White Star Airship. Overall, another great class that is good for both PvP and PvE. Next is Ancient Artifact User, released December 2023. She's the second collab and the hero class for Wizard. She is an interesting class since she's a physical class that also does magic. She also benefits from both magic and physical buffs, so gearing her was non-linear, which I think is great for hero classes. She did have some incredibly annoying skills such as the super long star wave, which also generates black holes, causing a lot of annoyance in PvP. She also has optical camouflage, which is very strong in PvP since it prevents targeting. Now in PvE, recently I saw Mike's use the Ancient Artifact User to take down bosses quickly in PvE, so when used right, it is also very strong there too. So overall, another successful collab resulting in a strong hero class. Next is Thor, released February 2024. He is the hero class for Advanced Novice because I guess the popular card Tornado build was stuck to wind and Thor is also stuck to wind. He is the first event exclusive class from ROM, so they can release it whenever they want. It also costs much less than the collab classes, which is great since he only costs 98 BCC. With his release, it really was the death to the Card Tornado Novice Guardian build. Previously, they had nerfed Novice Guardian by having high wind damage reduction in some instances, so I thought maybe they would reverse that for Thor, but nope, instead they decided to add some insane damage modifiers, so it didn't really matter if those existed. In addition to being very strong, he also got Lightning Cling, which became very important for Constellation Tower and other instances for grouping enemies together for more efficiency for AoE. Perhaps this was another tactic to make him a must-buy. Now he was a good time-limited hero class with a low cost. None have been released since him, although he was re-released once, so maybe this payment model isn't the greatest. I'd say the worst part of this was it being limited time, and I think most people just want a hero they can choose at any time. So I am fine with no other heroes being paid when it isn't part of a collab. Next is Fenrir, released April 2024. He is the hero class for Hunter. As someone who played Hunter as my first class in Ragnarok Mobile, I had always hoped that Hunter would be good, but unfortunately it isn't. Now it's not bad for PvP at the time, but definitely inefficient for PvE. So are we ever gonna get a fix for Hunter? Probably not. Fenrir put a nail in the coffin for Hunter. It is by far the superior option for ranged auto attackers. The devs couldn't fix the auto attack missing, so let's guarantee some crazy high damage after a few hits that won't miss. Let's also have Fenrir hit critical stats super easily and have great mobility that grants a bit of immunity. Fenrir is great if you wanted a ranged auto attacker for both PvP and PvE, but this is sad news if you've always hoped that Hunter would be good one day. So with many powerful classes released, how will the devs make us spend more money? Well, the bar must be raised yet again, and the answer is Khalitzburg, released June 2024. She is the second hero class for Knight, and meanwhile classes without a hero class are flipping out, because why does Knight get a second one? Well, life is unfair. Khalitzburg was the golden standard for physical DPS, too broken and yet never nerfed. She has one of the best debuffs in the game from her hero passive, giving 30% more damage received. Also, she has Flower of Desperation, which also gives her a lot of penetration percentage and skill damage. She also has Blossom Tea, which gives ignore defense based on penetration percentage. So for many classes, especially non-hero classes, they struggle to hit critical stats. Khalitzburg is one of the easiest ones in the game to achieve those. And that is one thing I find pretty unfair for non-hero classes. You need to put in so much effort just to hit critical stats, whereas for hero classes it's quite easy for some of them. So really, what kind of motivation do people have to play non-hero classes then? But if you don't really care for the non-hero classes, then I actually think it's pretty good for the game. because otherwise in PvE, there's no way free-to-play players can ever catch up. At least you have something to look for, even if you're not spending a ton of money. Now, one other note I'd like to say is despite the insanity of some of these hero classes, ROM doesn't nerf stuff too often, which I think is good. I play other games where they nerf stuff, and then you feel like you've lost all your money that you'd invested in. So I do agree with them buffing classes instead of nerfing them. And yep, don't you dare touch my Khalitzburg. Next is Sara Alin, released August 2024. She's the Oculus hero class. And finally, we get another magic DPS class, but unfortunately her primary DPS is stuck to fire, so it doesn't do that well in all instances. But she can certainly out DPS Genos, but just isn't as flexible as other physical classes like Khalitzburg, who has the flexibility to convert to other elements. Now at the time, she was probably the best magic DPS class that isn't a collab class. Next is Liu Mao Xing, released September 2024. He is the hero class for Bard or Dancer. Well, why? I guess because they both channel stuff. So he is a collab class, so how do we make sure people will spend 300 BCC on it? Well, how about making a magic class that can be both DPS and support? And not only that, but make it great in PvP or PvE. For some of the older classes, the devs did say that they wanted some to be strong in PvP, but not strong in PvE. Well, this is where it's kinda tricky, because for Liu Mao Xing, it's sorta good for everything. So again, why choose those older classes if they really can't perform as efficiently? I believe Liu Mao Xing has the best magic DPS in the game. Being able to spam both water and fire definitely covers a lot of elements. He can also take down many hard instances solo as well. But that's not all, how about some insane support skills that are useful in PvP and PvE? His support skills have anti-death, it can heal, it can give a shield, it can also boost your damage. Really, what can't Liu Mao Xing do? So Liu Mao Xing was definitely a must-buy and set the bar very high again. Unfortunately, with his release, he is the first hero whose weapon at Refine 15 gives a bonus effect. I personally am not a fan of this, but then again, that's because my Refine luck sucks, and also my snapping luck sucks as well. This started being a trend after that, as all hero classes with class-specific weapons started to have a very good bonus at Refine 15, and unfortunately sometimes it's definitely game-breaking to have it. This is a great way to sell those weapon packs that are typically released when a hero class comes out, because you need a ton of copies to refine to 15. Next is Ellinia, released October 2024. She is the hero class for Dorum, which does make sense. In the past, I had recommended Dorum for many people, and oftentimes they just didn't want to play Dorum because visually they just didn't like the short, cute look. Well, the devs certainly knew what to do about that. So they made Ellinia a cute cat girl, and after all, that definitely does sell. So not only is she a cute cat girl, but she also dominates in PvP. Unfortunately, they made her a bit too strong, and she can also inherit properties for whoever she sits on top of. And she often sits on top of Jormungandr to take advantage of the magic immunity to further be unfair. She becomes an unkillable beast, which also dishes out a ton of damage. I know the devs wanted to sell her, but did they really need to destroy PvP balance because of that? Even in the 6v6 tournament, she was typically the one that had the top kills. I do hope in the future that the devs will provide more counters to her from other classes. Next is Morroc, released December 2024. He's the second one for the wizard class, so other classes that still don't have a hero class are definitely weeping in the corner at this point. Now Morroc can do a crazy amount of damage, but one skill that's particularly amazing is the Dark Knight Shroud. You're forcing your opponents to attack with dark, and you have a ton of dark reduction for you and your teammates as well. This is really annoying because it limits people's ability to use elements to counter. This makes him very strong in PvP right now, and also pretty good in PvE as well. Also, one nice side effect of this is he's now best friends with Nidhogg, who can now Holy Convert because of his release. I do like that they added this new archetype of doing Holy Convert, because before that, Dark Convert with Saint was very popular, but it's nice to have new archetypes. With Morroc's release, I believe he is the best magic DPS in the game, which isn't a collab. Finally is Sunlight, released March 2025. She is a hero class for Taekwon, and she plays very similarly. But she does power creep Taekwon like crazy. In comparison, Taekwon looks like trash. She does have the potential to be the highest DPS in the game, especially when she's at the 7 out of 7 core hero passive. Some hero classes can't be played if you're not 7 out of 7 core hero passive, and she's definitely one of those. In fact, the devs almost made her unplayable when she's not 7 out of 7. The devs really designed her to lose so much of her damage potential if she's not max level, and that's very unfortunate for this class. Now she's a bit more fragile compared to Khalitzburg, but with a party she can absolutely melt things and convert to any element in the game. I didn't think anyone could ever top Khalitzburg, but she really did. I use her a lot in weekly instances to speedrun stuff now. Even though the Nameless one will be released in the future, I'm saving up my ruins for the collab. I'm extremely curious about how they plan to top Liu Mao Xing for a DPS that can compete with Khalitzburg or Sunlight. To make money, it's got to be broken, and the standard is sky high right now. I think it would also need to be good in both PvP and PvE, otherwise it will be a tough sale. In the past, devs made some classic jobs good in PvE, but not great in PvP and vice versa for balancing, but with hero classes it seems less these days. You basically have to be good in both, otherwise it's hard to have a general appeal. I think overall, as the power level of hero classes goes up, it will make the game easier and give free-to-play players the opportunity to feel like an overpowered anime protagonist. This feeling of being overpowered is unfortunately hard to experience with non-hero classes. However, as hero classes continue to dominate the game, it feels less and less like a Ragnarok game. I know this does bother some people, because some people play this game for nostalgia, and if classic jobs aren't even that good, then it's hard to enjoy this long term. You can definitely play some of these classic jobs for memes, but it's definitely not efficient. Now, I think non-hero classes need to have critical buffs and debuffs. For example, we need a class that can reduce Refined Magic Reduction, since none can do that right now. So that can definitely make a class super popular. And also right now instances are super tough, so hitting critical stats alone isn't enough. You also need strong debuffs if you want to be useful for your party. In addition to buffs, I think they need to be able to provide counters for some of the popular classes, as that will also make them popular. And if they don't want to touch the PvP meta, then definitely use the damage to monsters attribute, because I think that really will make some of these classes viable again. So I think hero classes have definitely added a lot of good to this game, as well as added some bad. Well, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like hero classes affected Ragnarok Mobile too much? Let me know in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I'd recommend, and if you want more Ragnarok Mobile class recommendations, check out this playlist over here.